So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fred Huntley.
Thank you, Lynn.
So, welcome, Fred.
And I also, Ed, there he is. He asked me about 2 or 3 months ago if I would speak, and I wasn't quite sure at that moment, but I did say yes for some reason. So I'm honored to be here this evening, and he did ask me to talk about the DAR railway. And I said, well, I'm working on the station, and you'll see a HO scale model of the station over there. It's going to be put on our layout in Middleton when we finish here tonight. And it's one that I was researching for the information on it when I met Ed the first time, and got the information for. I was gleaning everywhere for information on that railway. Anyway, I'll start out with a little joke on the railway here. Bob's sitting in the passenger section of the mixed train to Kingsport. Train ground and grinding, and then finally come to a halt. Bob in accommodation sees the conductor walking by outside. What's going on? He yells out the window. A cow on the track, replies the conductor. 10 minutes later, the train rattled along again, the slow, tired old pace, slams to a stop 5 minutes later. Bob sees the same conductor walking by again. He leans out the window and yells, "What happened? Did we catch up with the cow?" Anyway, I'll sit down here and oops. And most of it's going to be on the Kentville station, but I did briefly introduce the Dominion Atlantic Railway itself and all the different components that make up the railway. And I'll introduce myself a little bit. I've always had an interest in the railways. I was about 7 or 8 years old when I seen my first locomotive. It was a double-header steam locomotive going to Windsor hauling gypsum. And my dad was sitting there. My mom was probably in the grocery store. But I still remember. I don't remember much of it, but I do remember the guy lowering the gates on Geary Street, and the old steam train just going by. It was pulling a full load of gypsum cars. And so I think that kind of caught my attention right then and there. As I went along in life, I found different ways of seeing trains. I've been to Europe several times. I've been to the States, most of them around. Always planned my own trips and had it so that I traveled by train most of the time. And I think left-hand corner, Netherlands have a beautiful railway system. We were there when the tulips were, the bulbs were in bloom in the spring. That was a double thing. Cass Logging Railway in West Virginia, that was a cog railway. And that we got on that and went to the top of the mountain with the old logging equipment. Chattanooga, well, you heard that name before. I was over to Hungary, and they have a huge huge railway museum there, and they are working on a lot of static locomotives and stuff, their equipment, cars and stuff. I only give you a sample here of what I've seen. That particular locomotive was from the Soviet era, and on the side of it, if you see the little bright color there, that's an oval with a dove with a olive leaf in its beak, and I thought that was kind of different for the Soviet era. In Switzerland, that is the cog railway that goes up to Mount Pilatus. That's the steepest cog railway in the world, 49% grade in some places. And the seats on that are built like you're sitting on stairs. And it's fascinating. You go to the top of the mountain and there's a restaurant up there. You can look around for miles out over to Lucerne and everything else. And in Slovenia, they had a big old roundhouse. They converted to a museum in Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia. And they were working on a couple of locomotives when I was there, and I got to talk to them a little bit about it. But this is the really old equipment that's there. The Baltimore, Ohio Museum in Baltimore. That's a fascinating museum. A lot of components of railways there. And the thing about that is the turntable is inside the round building. The trains come in and then they turn and put them in the stall. But that was when they had smaller locomotives. Also, Abraham Lincoln's funeral train is stored or on display in there. The that's Durango and Rio. That's a Denver and Rio Grande locomotive. But the railway is now called Durango and Silverton. And it's a 34-mile long trip up through the San Juan Mountains. And that's a true coal-burning locomotive there. And they call them mud hens. They got small drivers and they look like a hen walking along. But it just went along through, and we were on ledges and everything else. A fascinating, beautiful train ride, but not for the timid. And also, the last one there on the lower right-hand corner is the Deutschbahn ICE train. Don't call it ice train when you're in Deutschland. It's that's in under the airport. And the nice thing about it, you get off the plane, you go through customs. There's hardly any problem. I've never had a problem getting into Germany. And I usually had a breakfast, get on the train. I would get my tickets here before I left on the internet. On the internet, and I'd have everything all ready for the whole. Usually I went for at least 2 or 3. I went for 3 or 4 weeks if I was going. So, and those things, there's places that will go 300 kilometers an hour, and that was, and you could drink coffee while you're doing that. Imagine when I was going to Montreal, I remember trying to drink coffee on our, and I forget the name of the train between Halifax and Montreal. Anyway, this is my home layout I have right now, and I kind of modeled it after the Napas Valley, different things. There's the fishing village, there's the little village there, there's the farmland and the logging thing. There's a lot more to it, but I thought I'd just show you a few pictures. And I did get a lot of experience when I was a member of the Model Railway Society in Calgary. I did take a few workshops on making buildings and on landscaping. So that's my specialty down at the layout in Middleton right now. So the Dominion Atlantic Railway and its components. The first part of the Dominion Atlantic Railway was really not part of the Dominion Atlantic Railway. It was built by the Nova Scotia government, and it opened in 1850. That's the railway is at its maximum when all the pieces of track were all together and working in before they tore everything up. Now here's the one. It was built in 1858 in Halifax to Windsor and Halifax to Truro. The train left Windsor Junction where it does now, and also the Dominion Atlantic Railway did lease it in 1914 for 99 years. And that particular village here, Iola's house, on the left-hand side, there's a hill that goes down. I used to slide down that with friends, and when we visited them out in Eller's house. Kind of a memory for me. Now, that other track only went as far as Windsor, because they wanted to get food or the gardening stuff from the valley down to Halifax for the market. And then in 1869, the Windsor Annapolis Railway was opened, and of course went from Windsor to Annapolis Royal. And Kentville was picked as its headquarters. The headquarters were for 1 year in Wolfville, but they didn't have enough room to build stations and yards and stuff in Wolfville, so they moved over to Kentville, and the station here was opened in 1870. Rushing ahead a little bit, sorry. And like you see the aerial photograph there. On the stations on the right-hand side of the picture there, you see the roundhouse over on kind of center left, Cornwallis River, etc. And I think that particular picture, I think the Aberdeen Hotel was still in behind the station. In 1875, the railway was originally built as a broad gauge, 5 feet 6 inches apart. The rails were 5 feet 6 inches apart. Now, they converted back to 4 feet 8.5 inches, which is standard railway width. I often wondered, I've heard different stories about why train tracks are 4 feet 8.5. I understand there's two different stories. One was England, that was the width of the wagon ruts, and so they followed suit because some of the trains were pulled by horse in England. Also, I don't know how the Roman carriages got involved, but their between the wheels were 4 feet 8.5 inches also. So I don't know. I just tried to find some information on it for fun. Now, in 1892, the Cornwallis Valley Railway was built from Kentville to Kingsport. And you can see on the picture there, the green lines there represent what the Cornwallis Valley Railway went. The yellow line goes out to Weston. And that was much later that was built. The train would, I was going to say meet the Kentville, but you would, the Kentville was a boat that they had, a CP had, and it run between Parsbro, Kingsport, and Woofle. Excuse me. And there was that was built because there's a lot of apple orchards and stuff along there, and that's the mainstay of the Dominion Atlantic Railway. Midland branch. In 1905, the Midland branch was purchased by the, I think that was still the Windsor and Annapolis Railway. Now, up in the upper right-hand corner was where Hants West Royal High School was. And I used to spend the geography class watching them switch the yards down in Brooklyn. And I paid for that dearly one day because evidently I was not paying attention to the teacher. She caught me inside the head with a geography book. If you remember, the geography books those days were quite big. But I was really interested watching the, and I've been in the Brooklyn station several times. There was and this picture was taken from the feed mill, but there were livestock pens. There was a co-op, which is on the left there. The station's on the right. And over behind there was a sawmill. And there was some lumber and stuff shipped out of there too, along with chips from a sawmill. And that railway run pretty straight through to Truro. It gave cut a lot of distance off going to Windsor Junction if the traffic was going to the Intercolonial in New Brunswick or somewhere. Now, the Western County Railways wanted to have a railway down there, so they had the railway built. They built the railway from Yarmouth to Digby. And there was a gap between Annapolis Royal and Digby for a lot of years. And I think it was 1892 that they got a grant from the federal government to build the bridges across the Bear River, Clementsport, and Joggers Rivers. The bridges there were financed by the federal government partly, so they were able to get to Annapolis Royal. And a couple of years later, the Windsor Annapolis Railway bought out the Western Counties Railway, and the name was changed to Dominion Atlantic Railway. And you can see the red line there where the railway went. I was going to keep that brief. Now, the North Mountain branch was built in 1914, and the CPR built that. And it ran from Centerville to Weston. And you can see the yellow line on there that shows where they called it the North Mountain Railway. The particular type of locomotive there is the really old ones. It's called a 440, and they called the American type locomotive. And that was that particular picture was taken at Weston. And I took a picture, got a picture of what the most common locomotive was on the DAR in the end, and this is a 10-wheeler. That's a DAR 1040 10-wheeler. That's made in Montreal by the Montreal Locomotive Works, and they were the most common type. There was a few Pacifics, which were 462, excuse me, in later years, but that was when they were finished on the main line, and the rest of the railway had been converted to diesel, and the DAR was one of the last places to end up getting dieselized. there's some stories there. I put these pictures in here because these are kind of things that I thought were pertinent for information in regards to the station and the DAR. The Aberdeen Hotel was built in 1890 something, I believe, and it was right north of the station, probably right where the Cleveland's Paint is now, in that area. It's a spectacularly beautiful old hotel, and I think we're going to model the front end of that when I get to it. It just looks like a nice challenge for me anyway. And that hotel was bought by the DAR in 1920 and tore down in 1930 when they finished building this particular hotel. This is the Cornwalls Inn, and that was opened in 1930. And that was the way it looked to start out with. It really looked a fascinating building. I mean, it looks like something European look to it, and I always wish it was still like that sometimes, but progress changes things. We just accept it. Also, Grand Prairie Memorial Park was built by the Dominion Atlantic Railway, and that's a picture when they run it. It was built. It opened in 1922. They built took 2 years to build that church, and they made the promise that they would use that land to make it a memorial. They bought it from a guy named Hebron, who was French Acadian, that they would use this land to make a memorial to the Acadians. And this particular picture was when it was still owned by the DAR. In 1958, I believe, 1958, it was sold to the federal government of Canada, who made it into the park it is today. They took some of the buildings out, they changed a few things, but most of it still, and this is the same entrance that's used today again. They had a few years, it was the information center was on the east side of the road in front there. We're moving into the Dominion Atlantic Railway Station here, and this is what I was looking for when I talked to Ed over here at the new station we'll call it. I was looking for information I was gleaning for information that really was wanting to give me some information for to build this station. I know that some people, there's one guy, he's building all the rooms and everything. I didn't go into that much detail. Actually, we built it just the front of it and the sides because it's going to be back close to a wall on our layout, and we decided just to make that so that we could save time and energy. If I wanted to really get to it, I could probably build one later with all the details in it. But this was something that, we had to have on our layout because that was the original, that is the railway mainly. The central station is the heart of the whole system between the whole DAR system. The first station was opened in 1870. It was started in 1869. The offices were located in Woofle for the first year, and then they were moved into this building here that you see on the left. You can see the locomotives there are wood burners. You see the tender on the back of the steam locomotive there, and the big pile of wood in the front right there. And also up at the top there, in the middle top, just below the tree line, I understand was the KCA. And that, I didn't think it was around that long, but the buildings have been replaced 3 or 4 times too, and expanded and everything else. You wouldn't recognize it today, but yeah, that was up there at that point in time. And that first building was 74 by 34 wide, 74 feet long. And all the yards were there. There's nothing like it was towards at its prime. That probably was a shop to fix the locomotives in or whatever. In 1889, they decided they need a baggage room. So on the east side of it, this side of it, they built a 30-foot wide, 30 foot long by 30 foot wide. The building's 30 foot wide, 34 feet wide. Okay, my mouth is going faster than my brain. Sorry about that. And this 30 foot wide was added for the baggage. on the left, you can see the window, the door there on the freight shed. We'll show you a picture later with a little bit more interesting information on that. And you can see some of the yards we're starting there. There are two lines going through, the one for the passenger, and then there'd probably be a freight or something going through the other line. But a lot of times there was freight cars stopped on that line for the freight warehouse. In 1902, they started drawing plans up to expand the station and to make it look a little more professional. And this opened in 1904. They added 40 feet on the west side of the building. They finished above this 30-foot long baggage room. They put the tower on the front, and they put canopy all the way along the front over the platforms, and a canopy all the way around the building. The reason they put it all the way around the building was the train from Kingsport and Centerville would come in on the north side of the building with their passenger cars, and people would get off the main line passenger cars and go through the building and get on the one going out to Centerville. So kind of a nice handy thing to have. I remember looking at a lot of the details. There have been a lot of changes on the side there, but the building's basically the same shape. That's the front elevation of the 1902 expansion. That was around, I think there's some other drawings for it I've seen. It shows you where the broken lines are, where they added pieces into the building. That's another station. Now you see the freight shed there, the window on this side. Before there was a door. That particular window was in Windsor and Annapolis. Past their smaller centers, they had a class 2 passenger station, and they had that particular window in it. And I was quite interested to see it in the freight shed, but that was one of the defining features of a lot of the Windsor Atlantic stations. There's a lot of them that way. You see the bottom part is a brown, and the upper part was they call it straw yellow. That was the Windsor and Annapolis colors for their stations and all their buildings and everything. And it was there until just after the war. Then CP painted the buildings all their burgundy red. Up on the building, ledge behind, you can see some of the sanatorium buildings. Now this is the picture I used to give me a lot of information for my model over there. It was, now in that particular picture, and that was only there for a short time. You see the signals out in front of the tower? They never ever had those before or after. I don't know why. It was only a year or two they were out there. I talked to somebody, they said, well, all traffic had to stop in Kentville anyway because the dispatcher's orders were given out here, so they didn't need the flag to stop anybody. I don't know what changes were. On the right hand side, you can see the passenger car that's on there for the Centerville train. How's my time doing? Okay. Well, I modeled that particular thing, and like I say, I was talking to Ed about this. Now, I made that out of northeastern scale lumber. You can see the different pieces there. The scribe lumber comes for siding. There's little strips that we use for corner for like 6-inch boards and stuff like that. We have a guy that has offered and donates his time and machine to build a 3D printer. Now all the windows and doors are all made by 3D printer. You see the little door, he makes a beautiful job of it. And he makes the color we order, the size we order, and everything else. And so we have that's all basically components, my scrap box and my lumber box. That pretty well covers everything that I made that station out of up there, over there. And But the windows and door openings in the building have to be within 0.05 millimeter. And that's what the magnifying glass is for. I can't see that fine. And those are just a few of the tools I had, but there's the scale ruler, the knife, and razor square, cutting edges and stuff like that. Now I designed my my station on what's called a cricket. I don't know if many here, I'll show you a picture of it a little bit here. Cricket design space is used to make the cutting plan. I designed all the sizes and everything, put the cutouts, everything made perfect then. We have a special cutter that will cut wood and everything else, and all the windows just pop right in there. It's so nice to work with. Before that, I used to cut all them out by hand, patiently. Patience, Fred. This is a cricket, and that particular cutting cutter there was a knife that would, and somehow I don't know how the program works, but everything goes, and I just sat there and watch it and enjoy the time I have. And it takes about 15-20 minutes to cut out this particular set of walls and stuff. That's the components for the only part of the building, actually. So, you know, it was and I can only cut 11 inches wide, so I have to decide where I'm going to make my cuts and then make everything fit together when I made the walls over there. Yeah, and you can see there, a friend of mine made the base there that has the back on it. It's that magnetic, it holds all the pieces there so I can glue them up and put them together. And that way, but first I should have said I paint all those pieces first before I put them together. Get a nice crisp edge on the painted edges. And therefore, you know, it really makes a nice job. So and I used it, I painted the pieces before with the brown on the bottom and the yellow on the top. And I used masking tape. And there's another, I went way too fast. That was another picture of the completed building roughly. You've seen the blue tape on the top. And that was a trick I learned from doing cabinet work. You take the pieces of wood, you put the tape on it, put your glue in it, and then fold it up, tape it to your size, and it makes a perfect angle, and you don't need to wrestle with stuff so much. And now I'm talking about the Dominion Atlantic Railway that's our station that's at Middleton. That was before they moved the freight shed up to the side. Our layout was in the freight shed, but in 1960 they moved the freight shed up, whacked the end off the station, and totally destroyed the symmetrical look for it. They had a water tower in Middleton, and then behind that, the yellow building was Gates Pharmaceuticals. And that was an interesting story. I found some information on it. They used local herbs, drugs, herbs, leaves, roots, and flowers and stuff like that. But the carrier was 40% gin. And this would be when there was prohibition. So that was an interesting medicine. And our layout is roughly representing the 20s, 30s, and I made a mistake in saying 50 because we were I think I was trying to rush things. 20s, 30s, and 40s. And you see the Mackenzie's Creamery was in that brown building in behind. Yeah, but we got Middleton pretty well laid out in all the different streets and everything. And of course there were dirt roads back in those days. And the station's on the right front there. In behind was in 1931, there was a lunch counter. In I think it was 1902, there was a picture of the building, and there was a general store where the foundations are there. So we just burned it. And just for it to have some character to our layout. McDonald's school in behind, along with the bandstand, which was in that particular corner at the time. The ILOF building was right there, that green building. And behind that's the Baptist parsonage. The Baptist church is off to the left of that. And there was a printing shop in behind that. We pretty well run out of space, but we're going to paint some stuff on the wall behind it. How about that apple crop? It was we made 3 different orchards, of course, and we kind of, showed how the apple orchards looked with the barrels, the old ladders they reused. I tried making those ladders, and I finally just broke down and got Ed to make them on his 3D printer, which is much easier. We had a few blueberries there, and there's an old building there that it shows a better picture. There's the farm in the back. You've got the pasture on the left, water pond out back, and the old 1-room schoolhouse. We kind of had a lot of fun playing with this. There's 10 of us working there, and we had a great time. Another shot of the farmyard. That particular barn and the house is modeled after buildings that were in Upper Clemens. So and those was the particular colors that were on them too. Oh, I wish I knew how to back that up. That particular place here was a subsistence type farm, and in the 1930s and 40s, 60% of the valley was actually subsistence type farms. The people just had enough to live on, and there's a bit of poverty and stuff. There's that building that I don't know why I put 2 shots in there so close. You see a railway track. It's still not finished completely, but it's done enough that we can use the track for when we have people. I don't know how many people remember this scene. The old binder, stoops of grain, and then the thrash machine, along with the truck picking up the bags of grain. I do remember twice when we had thrashing at my dad's place. And the horses were still used. I think there was only one case, where we had steam tractors in the valley. This is Annapolis Rural. John did this one. He did a fall scene with regards to that, and he did a great job. He's come along a lot further now. The water looks real because you've got it all painted up, and then little waves, white caps and stuff painted on there, and it looks pretty nice now. But it's a work in progress, and we try to get things kind of looking. Then we got to go back and detail a lot of stuff yet. And if you look up in the middle area, you can see the coil of copper. We need a few spirits at the layout, so this is as far as we could get. And this is just kind of their bootlegging was pretty common around the 30s, so they hauled the stuff out and sold it. This outside of Windsor, near Windsor, I kind of figured they would do that. Here's my model of the Grand Prairie National Park. We painted the backdrop, and then we made some little buildings for the background there. That's Long Island out there. And then we made the particular building that the DAR built was that cone-shaped building for the information center. And then they also had a log station out front. And they used to have a lot of people come up from they had, what do they call it? They used to have a whole trainload of people come up. They would drop them off here. They would Saturday, Sunday afternoon, they would go in there, picnic, visit, and then the train would go into the Kentville turnaround and go back and take them back to Halifax. And some people even came from Boston to take that particular trip up for an excursion. And it made a lot of business for the DAR. Here, I worked for the Gypsum Company in 1973, but this is only a compressed view of what I thought it would probably look like. Some of the details are sort of fudged because we don't have a whole lot of room like they did in the gypsum quarries. But they had a narrow gauge railway. They bring in the rock and they put it in a dump hopper, and then it would be crushed to a primary and secondary crusher. They also, in the summer, could ship the gypsum out on the St. Croix River into the Miners Basin, but they couldn't do it in winter. So in the winter, they used to ship it out of Deep Brook in Annapolis County. And the railway had the job of hauling all that gypsum way down there. Major fundraiser for them. And because the St. Croix River would be just full of ice and caked up with mud and everything else in the wintertime. Now I'll brag a little bit about our railway museum in Middleton. Right now, that's what the inside of it looks like. It's been all gutted, and we had a fire where there was a lot of smoke damage. It didn't burn the structure, but the smoke and the water from the being put out did a lot of damage. And we were very lucky that we were kind of isolated from the main building out in our lake, so there wasn't much smoke out there and did little or no damage, I could say. We do have our one locomotive, 1274. That came from up at Clements Park. And that station is the way it looks today. We also got a 060 switcher from the Museum of Industry in Stellarton. And this particular locomotive used to be a switcher down in the Bridgewater yards. And of course the railway comes across country there from Bridgewater to Middleton, and used to go out to Port Wade when they used to have iron mines out in Nicktaw and Torbrook mines. They used to haul the traffic down there, but that ended in 1928. We also got a couple of the industrial switchers. I'm not sure which one's which, but one came from the Bowater Mersey, and the other came from the Wallace Sandstone Quarry up in the Northumberland Strait. And we have a guy that said he can get one of them operating. So we might have a little piece of track, shuffle trains and kids back and forward on. Now, I'll give you a little bit of information. We are, I didn't follow my notes at all, hardly. For the Railway Museum in Middleton, we had a fire in April last year. Smoke and water damage is complete. Fix it up. We're just waiting for insurance settlement so we can carry on finishing up inside. In the future, as funds come along, we plan to include rebuilding the interior station, completing the HO scale layout, and adding a G scale in the back compound. Rebuilding one of the diesel switchers and returning the 060 to aesthetically pleasing appearance. Right now there's a lot of rust on it, and you can see there was some components laying on the ground. Anyway, our mission statement: the Middleton Railway Museum is dedicated to preserving the history of the railway throughout the valley and to the economic contribution it made to the economic contribution it made. If anybody's interested, you can inquire on the website. There's a phone number. Call and set up. They will give custom tours or private tours or group tours. And the mission there is free will. I'd like to acknowledge that the DAR wiki site gave me permission to use their pictures and use some of the history notes. The DAR wiki is on the layout. I think it's called a different name. It's a digitally preserved. If you go on there and look up DAR, it will show the Dominion Atlantic Railway Digital Preservation Initiative wiki. So and everything. I did a lot of research for this. Gary Ness has some nice books out. He has three different books out. Also, there were some his old books I received years and years ago on the DAR. I looked at some of the pictures and stuff. I picked up bits and pieces of pictures for different items on our layout. I'd like to thank Ed. He did our 3D printing for us, and I told him I put this name on there because he has done a big favor for us, because we ordered those parts for windows and doors. It would be several. I bet you close to $1,000 what we've gotten him doing. Bill Lindley, he gave me some verbal information. Our HO crew, layout crew, there's Neil Hunter, who's the head of it, Clyde Balzer, Eric Smith, Bob McCaldy, Bob Andrews, Fielding Croats. He's 17 years old. He was 15 when he started coming, helping us. And it's nice to have a young guy that was interested, right? And John Atwell and Dave York, and of course Fred. And I think that is pretty well it, I think, there. Escape, there we are.
Does anyone have any questions for Fred?
Is there anybody else?
Dan.
Hey,
Yeah, certainly. My name is Dan Quammen, transportation historian and a Bob holder.
and I talked to you.
Yes, yes. So we chatted on the phone. Congratulations on finishing your model.
Thank you.
Believe me, I know what an achievement that is. I started a model at Kentville Station 10 years ago, and mine's not finished yet. So congratulations to you for finishing your model.
Well, I think I had an incentive there, and I didn't have to work other than doing that.
And you were wise enough not to try to do the interior, which I've been trying to do, and it's made it 100 times harder.
Yes, you explained that to me on your phone call with me.
Yeah, so you built a wonderful model, and congratulations.
Thank you very
And
much.
I'll ask you one question because I know you know the answer, and I was charmed to see that you put barrels on top of the roof. And maybe
Yes.
you could talk about what those are. You can see them in some of the photos, and it often mystifies
Yes.
people.
And I guess, I'd seen them out west on trestles for the CPR and CNR on wooden trestles. I think it was for the purpose of putting fires out in drier weather then.